Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Houston, dating and love coach, and today we are here with Dr. Sharon Cohen, who specializes in healthy communication strategies and the social dynamics of men and women. She's a master at translating what men say and what they mean. Oh, we need that for sure. She helps align what women are saying and doing so their communication is clear and they attract a lifelong partner they desire. She's a native to Newport Beach, California, graduate of UCLA, receiving her Master of Social Work from USC, and she received her PhD from the University of Texas in Austin in the School of Social Work. And she has an extensive background working in the psychiatric hospital setting with mental health issues and all forms of addictions. Welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. It's such an honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about how you came from all this wonderful educational and intellectual background to be doing what you are doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, gosh, there's a couple of different pathways that I got here, really. One is that dealing with people's mental health issues is such an honor because you're dealing with people in like the darkest moment of their life. But doing that for such a long time is its own burden. And I did want to come up and deal with people in a lighter moment of their life. When you're working with people in the hospital, it's a short-term thing. You only are with them for maybe 2 to 5 days. And so you don't really get to see a full arc of transformation. And so I did get to the point in my life where I felt like I really wanted to help people over a longer period of time to really see them kind of come through the, burst the bubble and get to the other side of really where they were feeling much better, not just sort of, get through that crisis moment. So
and I suppose when you see those moments at the results of a lifelong set of mindsets, experiences, and struggles emotionally, then it becomes clear that you can see there might be ways long before the end of that road where you saw them before, where you could have maybe helped them diverge and actually create a healthier life much sooner so that the pain and the suffering is shortened, that we get an opportunity to really shift that before it becomes to the extent and extremity of maybe a mental health stay somewhere.
Certainly, some of them for sure. Some, it's a much deeper issue. It's a much more
Sure.
biochemical, organic issue.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of them, it's a moment in time where it's just like they've gone through a divorce or they've gone through some sort of really intense, what's the word? Just a traumatic life experience, and it's taken them down because they didn't have the coping skills or they didn't have the social support. And so absolutely, to help them prior to this experience would have absolutely been wonderful to be there.
Yes. So I know you have a lot of insight then in how we relate to each other. And one of the most ultimate and scary and desired relationships is the romantic relationship. So when we can resolve some of our struggles and suffering in that, oftentimes it blossoms and affects the rest of our lives and relationships too. So I'm excited for you to share your tips for us in dating and relationship for the women watching so that they can discover a different way of looking at their situation where they may be suffering or struggling.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I think our romantic relationship it's just such a huge, it's where we have the witness to our life, right? It's where there's no mother without child, there's no child without mother, and we just seek to recreate that in our romantic relationship in life. And so it's that bond that when it's taken from us, we feel like we've lost our breath. We feel like we've lost our oxygen. And so it's such a critical relationship. And I think it's one that we all know. If we've suffered heartache, we know what it feels like to have that rug pulled out from underneath us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know one of the things that you are known for is that you have this method that you call red light, yellow light, green light. And I love that it gets to be so clear. I know we often hear of red flags, but I think this helps with the nuance of understanding a bit more for the complexities of dating and relationship, not just the black and white things that might be deal breakers. Can you share with us a little more about each of those areas in your method?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think when you're looking at, red lights, what are the red lights? First of all, I think it's really important. I read a book years ago called All Men Are Jerks Until Proven Otherwise. And I think it really could be all people are jerks until proven otherwise. But one of the things about it is that you start on a trust level of 0 with everybody. You don't have mistrust for them, and you don't trust blindly. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, I'll trust you until you give me reason not to. And I don't think that's the way to start. I think you just start from a neutral place. And then you allow people to build their trustworthy record. It's kind of like a bank. A bank doesn't start you with a $26,000 credit line. They start you maybe with a $500 credit line. And I think we need to do the same thing with people. So when you start with that neutral credit line or neutral trustworthy line, then you give them a little bit of information about you, and you see what they do with it. Do they share that with somebody that you didn't want them to? Do they use that information against you? And you see, and if they break your trust, then they go below the trustworthy line. If they hold it close to their heart and they don't use it against you, then they build their trustworthiness. So
Yeah.
that's a piece of it.
And I think too, sometimes people forget what is trust. It's not just that they periodically show up, but that there's a consistency, so And I think that like when you were mentioning that idea of mother-child, where we kind of want to recreate that. Well, a child trusts the mom when they consistently show up. Like if they're always there to pick them up after school or always feed them, then there's no fear about whether or not that's there or not. I mean, unless of course you've had that experience, but in the goal of healthiest relationships, right? So
Right.
it makes sense that that's what we would want to look for. And when we consciously think of it that way, then we get to put the brakes on and slow things down. And what I say to people is don't rush through the dating process. That's so sweet. That it's not just meet somebody and get in a relationship, because that's that blind trust, right?
Absolutely. One of the keys is, do they make and keep agreements? First of all, if they don't know how to make an agreement, that's an issue. But then if they don't keep that agreement, then that's a whole nother ball of wax. Because it's a lot of people. Jerry Seinfeld had a great episode about, it's one thing to take the reservation, but it's really the holding of the reservation that's important. And it's true. It's one thing if you make a whole bunch of agreements, but if you don't keep the agreement, it really means nothing. So I would say it's the same here with relationships. If you're not making and keeping agreements or commitments, then it really means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to pay attention to that.
So take your time to give them opportunity to show up consistently. And that doesn't mean they're not human and sometimes don't make mistakes, but how do they respond when they don't hold and aren't consistent, or they break a trust, or if it's a small thing like they showed up later, whatever it might be, it's how they handle that and own the responsibility for it. And do they make amends, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really then that goes to the yellow light, right? Because then, so if they do break an agreement, like how many times is okay? So if you're in the very beginning of a relationship and you're just starting to date someone, so like first time, well, anybody can have a first time mistake. I don't think you just say, okay, like you broke an agreement, you stood me up, it's over. I think you kind of give somebody, a first strike. But if they do it 2 times in a row, then I think you really got to question, okay, this doesn't seem to be someone who is really capable. But 3 strikes, then kind of you're out, especially within a short period of time. And with someone that you're just starting to date, because that's someone who really isn't making and keeping agreements. If you're in a relationship of, 30 years and they've, missed 3 things over 30 years, I think you're probably okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that, because people often, especially with so many women who may have had roller coaster relationships, traumatic or even toxic relationships, their understanding of, and it makes sense, where we've learned growing up, maybe from the experiences we had or witnessed, what is normal, okay, for how many times trust is broken. If you had a dad who constantly broke trust with your mom, that's the only thing you ever learned. But we get to retell that story and create new rules and guidelines and boundaries for us, right, as adults moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. You do. And you have to ask yourself, what is the story that I'm telling myself about this? Because we all are telling ourselves stories about other people.
Yeah.
And so is this story the truth, or is it just like a belief? It's just something that I'm continuing to tell myself about this other person that may or may not be true, because that is what a belief is. It's just a story that you're telling yourself over and over and over again. And it may or may not be true. So you have to really actually look deep and find out what is the truth.
Yes, I love that. And I like that you gave the tangibles of a short period of time. You know, one strike may be okay. Two, just think about that. And then three, really, you should be pretty clear on that one. And it might just be that you're not the one for each other, because somebody who really is committed and sees you as the person they really want to pursue, they're not going to have three strikes. It just isn't going to happen. It doesn't mean they're innately a bad person. It's just they're not invested enough and drawn enough to you for whatever the reason to make that commitment of time, energy, and resources. And you want that and deserve that in your life.
Absolutely. And don't make it be that like you're not a good enough person. Like, we are all lovable, worthy human beings, but sometimes, I have this pineapple mango theory. Like, some people like pineapples and some people like mangoes, and maybe this person likes pineapple and you're a mango.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with either. They're both wonderful fruits, but they just like one and you're the other. So don't make it be about like you're bad or you're not good.
It's
Or
just
they're
about
bad.
fit.
Yeah, it's just not fit. Exactly.
Or timing too. Sometimes it's just really off timing and you just have to say, I learned something. That was great. And it's great practice.
Yeah. It's wonderful practice. And I'm a huge fan of looking at that everything and every date is a lesson and a blessing. Even if it didn't work out, there's always something you can learn from a date, from a short-term relationship, from a long-term relationship. But you just have to have that perspective of looking back and saying, what can I learn from this? Even if it was one date, there's something that you can learn.
Absolutely. And just recognizing the things in someone showing up that are the positive qualities that maybe you are looking for, even if a number of other things don't align. Like, maybe he is open-hearted and shared a lot in an appropriate way, was vulnerable, that you're like, oh, I really do want that in a man. It's not this man, but now I got to experience it. Now I know what it feels like to receive that. And I'm going to know that feeling next time.
Exactly. I love that. That's so true, because each man will tell you either something that you want, or even more importantly, something that you don't want. Yes. I'm a huge fan of women figuring out what it is that they don't want in a relationship or in a man.
And I bet one of the pieces, and you can correct me if I'm just making an inference here. We'll see if I'm on board. But if you're really about communication, it's also about listening 100% to all the things a man says to you, not just selectively hearing the shiny object, warm, fuzzy things.
Absolutely. Oh, no, absolutely. If you don't listen carefully, because really, I do tell women when they're coming up with their non-negotiables, make it be 3 things that you don't want, because then you're listening extra carefully for those things so that you don't get confused by the shiny things that you do want, and let these ugly things that you're not wanting, or they don't necessarily have to be ugly, they're just things that you don't necessarily want for you. They don't fit for your life. And
maybe you're a vegetarian and you really don't think aligning with somebody who eats meat would work for you. Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, so now on to green lights. We haven't even gotten there yet.
Yeah, green lights. What I love about green lights is, first of all, they're things that maybe you just don't even realize. Because the thing is that so often we're attracted to things that are familiar or comfortable for us. And the things that were familiar or comfortable for us maybe haven't been working. And so you have to learn to go towards something maybe that is new or unfamiliar or a little bit uncomfortable. And so it's trying to date somebody who maybe is just different from what you've been trying on in the past. So one of the things that I think is that sometimes we go towards men who we're super, super drawn to, who are like a 10 or 11 on the Richter scale of our sexual energy. And those men, I believe, are often touching a wound inside of us. And that we oftentimes don't even know, because we become so sensitized towards them and desensitized towards men who are like a 7 on the sexual Richter scale. And so it's like having to try to go towards someone who maybe doesn't like light off a whole bunch of fireworks, but there's still sexual energy there. And so I think it's really important to kind of try something new that doesn't maybe seem like it's like such a great fit, but there's actually a lot there going on.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So this leads into when you say you date familiar. So if a man feels ordinary, normal, maybe boring or foreign, is that actually maybe a sign that you should go on a second date?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the thing is first of all, on first dates, men are oftentimes really not themselves. If he's interested in you, which he obviously is because he's on that first date with you, he's probably a little dumbstruck, a little tongue-tied, and so he's not showing himself off at his best. And so you have to give him the opportunity to go on a second date so that he can actually get a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more comfortable, so he can show you a little bit more of who he is. And either he's maybe not saying too much, or he's saying too much on that first date. So give him that second date to be a little bit more savvy.
And relaxed too, right? More relaxed, more confident because, she said yes. Okay.
Yeah, she said yes.
Again. Now that she's actually met me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So I think it's
they're nervous too.
Yeah. They're so nervous. And I think the thing that we don't realize is how many no's men have suffered through. And this goes back to like elementary school, junior high, high school, dance clubs, bars, where women, we don't realize what we've done to them. We have turned to them at all those places I just mentioned and said, either dismissed them without a no or with a no, just turned and said no, or just like looked over our shoulder as if they were aliens when they're actual human beings, and just said, no, we don't want to dance, or, like I said, dismissed just the look. And they're people, they're actual human beings. So it's a little painful. So for them to have to be the ones who usually ask, it's nice to be a little kind. I always say leave men better off than when you first met them. If you can, be kind. Just always be kind.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And that little nod to kindness in the nice way of saying no, thank you. Even just, I mean, not everybody can answer every message, and some even the online apps don't even allow for that without, quote, matching. They've kind of made this more difficult to be civil. And if you get the opportunity to say thank you, but no thank you and good luck, I hope you find your person, they're like, I've had clients who said, oh my gosh, I got responses saying, you've literally been the only person since I started dating to say thank you and no thank you, but thank you so much for that. It felt really good. And that energetically just felt good for us both to be humans together.
I so agree. I think it's horrible that there's, the lack of response. I mean, I do hear the same thing, that men are just like, it's like crickets, nothing, absolutely nothing. And so to have that human connection, just some human connection, because isn't that what we're all looking for? And I do encourage my clients to, just remember that this is a man who's just seeking connection as well on the other side of the table. Don't be so like caught up in, is this going to be my future husband? Don't be caught up in, is this going to be my future boyfriend? Just realize that there's just another person across the table who's seeking connection as well. And even if it isn't going to be, a third or fourth date, just be kind. Just realize he's just looking for the same thing you're looking for, even if it's not with you. Yes. It's what I said before. Just leave him better off than when you came. Just be kind.
Yes. Yes, and that's great, and it's great practice too to be in your feeling, to be vulnerable, to compliment. And a compliment doesn't mean I'm agreeing to sleep with you, or I'm agreeing to be in a relationship with you, or I'm even agreeing to a second date with you. It just means I'm actually acknowledging you. And I think women want to spin into the meaning behind anything I say, and then it stops us from saying things.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah. We just need to be open-hearted, and you're right, just be in our feelings, because when we get back into our body and out of our head, we can be so kind and so open and so receptive to just the masculine energy that's coming at us, and just allow ourselves to be receptive and not feel like we so need to do so much. We can just be open.
Yes, and I love that. So I know one of the other things too, with you being such a master, a whiz at helping us translate our communication between men and women, that I'm sure you have in your pocket a few of the things that women constantly or more regularly misinterpret from what a man might say or what he might do. So maybe you can unpack some of those so we are prepared to better not jump to conclusions or make this misunderstanding.
Yeah. I think one of the things that women do is they take men literally when they're not saying anything specific. So, for instance, when a man says, I'll call you soon, or I'll call you later, or let's do this again, he's not saying anything. He's, unless a man has bought the ticket or made the reservation, he's not telling you that he's actually going to do anything. So, when a man says that, don't take it to mean anything.
Is that more like window shopping, just like we're kind of doing?
Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, like for instance, if a man is on a first date with you and he says, you know what, I'd love, or first or second or third date, and he said, I'd love to take you to meet my parents in Hawaii or something, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe he said that. He's just running that through his mind. He's just thinking about it, trying it on for size, and then he may go home and go, you know what, I liked her, but not quite yet. It's a little too early for that or whatever. And so she's like, oh my God, what am I going to take? What am I going to pack? What am I going to wear? And he's done thinking about that now. He's on to the next and thinking, yeah, it's a little too early for that. Right?
How about for those first dates when a man might say, I'd love to see you again? They literally say that. The woman will say, yes, I would love to. It's a very clear affirmation, not it's just sort of an ambiguous response from the woman. And then they don't hear from them again. Is that still like, it seems like it's an interesting moment where you really feel you're going to have a second date.
Right. But
And
he didn't say, I'd love to see you again. How about next Tuesday?
yeah.
So that's the difference. When a man wants to see you again, he'll say, I'd love to see you again. What are you doing on Saturday?
He wants to book you then.
He wants to book you right then.
Good.
I'd love to see you again is very nebulous. It's very evasive. He's saying it because he may feel that, but he may not be 100% sure. If he's sure, he's going to say, I'd love to see you again. What are you doing tomorrow?
Yes.
So it's this he's being nice because he thinks that's what he should say, but he's not 100% sure. He may think that maybe he wants to see you again, but he's not sure.
And so women should give men a bit of a break by knowing now how to interpret this, that maybe they want to be nice and it's not necessary. It is also creating miscommunication. So they don't want to hurt your feelings and they don't know for sure. But if you just know this and know that there's no other date, and I like to say to my clients that it's not a date until you have a place and a time.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a
Like,
date.
even if he says, let's book something Saturday, that's still not a date. And don't hold off your whole day for it until he's picked the place and the time, or you've had that conversation. It's a done deal and it's in the calendar. If you
Absolutely.
can't calendar it, it's not a date.
That's right. I totally agree. That's exactly right. 100%.
Okay, so what are some other miscommunications that we sometimes fall into?
I would say, I think, one of the things is, I think it's really important for women to start looking and noticing what a man's patterns are, because I think when men sort of maybe disappear for like a few days, and they think, oh my God, something's wrong. And it's like, no, if you just start to recognize what his patterns are, then because every man has a pattern. And so you start to think that it's about you or that you've done something wrong. And it's like, no, he probably just has a pattern that he goes into. And once you start recognizing it, and he'll pull away for a day or two, or maybe for 3 days and then come back. But as long as you allow him to do that, and the patterns will if he's interested, the pattern will change to get shorter and shorter and shorter if he's interested in you. But if you start chasing after him and break his pattern, then it'll be over.
So he might have this natural pattern of being more out and about doing things, whether it's with you or friends, and then doing projects at home or being more introverted or recover, whatever that might be.
Right.
That's great knowledge, so that we just wait and allow and receive, and to watch for that pattern to shorten. And if it feels like it's not changing, what does that mean?
Then he's probably, just keeping on with his life, and it's not, and if it doesn't change over, a significant amount of time, then you're probably just not rising up in his level of interest. But if it change, if you see it change over time, the first few months, like 2 months, 3 months, then you're becoming someone who's more important to him.
Yes. And that consistency again and earning that trust is all a part of that. And you want them to illustrate that they want to be with you.
Right.
And that builds that trust even further. So it goes circling right back to that. That's so great. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you have any others that pop in your mind?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I mean,
okay.
you asked, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So can women ask for what they want from men, and should they be scared of rejection, of maybe being left or abandoned, which I know a lot of women may fear if they've had that happen in their past? How can they break that old pattern and some of those fears?
Yeah, so I think women definitely can ask for what they want. I think there's a certain way to ask for what you want without seeming like you're nagging or criticizing or whatever. And so one of the ways is that instead of asking for what you want, I think it's helpful to ask for what you don't want, which it maybe seems really backwards. But when you ask for what you want is kind of a more masculine thing to do. So I'll give you a quick example. This is years ago, I was with some guy friends, and a girl came up and asked a friend of mine, she said, I really want you to teach me she was asking my guy friend, I really want you to teach me how to surf. And he was like, oh, okay. And he was really taken aback by it. And he kind of said yes, but you could just see he was sort of like thrown off balance by it. A few minutes later, he came over to me and he's like, oh, you know what? This really cool guy is coming in town to play some music soon. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That sounds like a concert I wouldn't want to miss. So you see how I turned it around and said, didn't want, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, cool. You know what? Then I'll look into getting tickets for that. If, sounds like you'd want to go. And I'm like, oh, that'd be great. So I allowed him to become the hero by saying, let me do that for you. And I think that's the thing, is men want to be the hero. But when you say, I want you to do this for me, it's like, it's a little confronting. And so I think sometimes when we turn it around and say, I don't want, then it allows them to step up and really kind of be respectable and kind of save the day. And I think it's just more feminine. It's just a more feminine way of asking.
And I liked what you said there about the don't want. It wasn't I don't want this in a way of that's down-putting, but more like, that sounds like a concert I don't want to miss is a positive way to use the I don't, rather than it to be pushing on the negative. So there's that nuance that people have to get to play with here.
Yeah, it is. It's very nuanced. And yeah, it's definitely not a negative thing. It's a different way of speaking. And it's something that you kind of have to really learn and integrate kind of how to utilize that don't want.
And it sounds more like it's the door opening for an invitation.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are already at our time. I can't believe it. We've had such good conversation. Red light, green light, yellow light, for you to know about trust. And you have a free gift for everybody that's going to be right below here in this video.
Yeah. I would love to be of service. If you want to go to my website and you scroll down to the bottom, you can sign up for my ebook. It's called Turning Mr. Wrong into Mr. Right. My website is drsharoncohen.com. It's DRSHARONCOHEN.com. And again, you just get your free ebook there. At the very bottom, you just have to scroll all the way down.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon Cohen. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's been wonderful.